You may start, Mr. Rakesh.
Yes, sir. I was just sharing the screen. So, namaskar everyone. To discuss about our session, which is on the
Please
topic
give
design and development of
Mr.
the question
Rakesh.
paper. Yes,
Please
sir.
give a brief introduction of yours and then start. Okay.
Right. So, myself Rakesh Kumar. I am from Bharati Vidya Bhavan, Vidyashram, Pratap Nagar, Jaipur, working as mathematics. I am exams in charge also in the school. So today I'll be taking the workshop, the session on design and development of question paper for class 10th mathematics. So before we start up with the session, I would like to know from you, as you all are knowing the topic of the session, I would like to know from you what are your expectations about the session, means what will make you feel happy and satisfied at the end of the session. Some responses I want to know, I want to have from your side. This is just to align my presentation with the expectations of yours as well, so that I can, at each slide, I will be able to answer your questions as well.
So we would like to learn some new ideas or ways of making an interesting paper. Some different
Right.
questions formats actually.
Okay, right. So we will start up with the presentation. Let's see. So at first, what our objectives are about the session. The first objective is to understand the importance of role of assessment framework for designing and development of question paper. Right now, when we are designing the question papers, we most of us we must not have even heard the name of assessment framework. So we'll discuss about it. Then develop skill in creating a good question paper, including MCQs and subjective questions that meet the objectives of a large scale assessment. So while designing a question paper, we will develop our skill that how we can create a good question paper, what is a good question paper, what type of questions should we ask, and what should be the quality of good questions as well. Talking about the outcomes of the session, we will be able to understand the importance of good questions for effective assessment. We'll be able to categorize and development high quality assessment instruments. Assessment instrument means the question paper. Be able to create good question paper including MCQs and subjective questions as per the item writing guidelines and assessment principles. And we will be able to create an effective marking scheme. So effective marking scheme is an important part of designing and development of question paper. So we will discuss that also. To achieve these outcomes, we will discuss on some agendas. So how we'll achieve these outcomes? So the agendas will be key stages in the question paper development, means what are the procedures for the development. Second, assessment framework, as I have already introduced, that assessment framework is an important part while designing a question paper. So we will discuss about it. Then preparing the blueprint, which we are all familiar with. But what should be the content of blueprint? How we should prepare the blueprint? The format of blueprint, that we'll all discuss here. Then we'll discuss the best practices in making MCQs and subjective questions. So we are all aware of the types of questions. They are MCQs and subjective. We'll see how we can make the good MCQs and subjective paper. We will also discuss about the Bloom's taxonomy and the question development, then preparation of marking scheme, and there are some checklists that I will show you that what we should check at the end of the question paper design. So talking about our first topic, key stages in question paper development. So when we want to develop a question paper, the first step is to develop the assessment framework, which we will discuss in detail. Then development of blueprint, development of items, I must say questions, then review of the items. We must review the questions as well. Then finalization of the items for this question paper. Once we have got the reviews of the questions from our colleagues, then we should finalize the items as per the reviews, means what can be developed, what good can be done with the question. Then development of question paper means when we have finalized the items, then we'll put them in the question paper. And at the end, again, we will have a quality review and check of the question paper. Before assessment of the students, we have to assess our question paper as well, as to whether our question paper is able to check what we want to assess from the of the students. So that should be the stages of the question paper development, how we are going to develop the question paper. So our first topic is assessment framework. So what an assessment framework is, it is a description and discussion about what an assessment intends to measure. Like sometimes if I say I want to ask a question, so whenever I am asking a question, I must be very much clear what I want to ask, what concept I want to assess of the from the child. So this first point, what to assess, so that should be very much clear in our mind, what we want to assess. Then the framework includes the definition of domain, the area of learning that is being measured. Means suppose I have decided a concept that this I am going to assess, this I want to know whether a child is knowing or not. Then I have to decide from which domain I am going to ask the question on this particular concept. So that, and the proportion of the domains we have to keep in mind, that which domain is how much of proportion. Then the framework also outlines how an assessment is constructed by highlighting the proportion of items for each aspect of learning. Means we have to keep in mind all the aspects, all the Bloom's taxonomy stages, everything, whether my question is covering everything or not. Then format of the questions, we have to decide whether from this concept I am going to ask an MCQ, whether I am going to ask a true false question, whether I am going to ask a long answer question or short answer question, that I have to decide. Then the length and the number of questions. Now this particularly for class 10th board exam, if we say, CBSE defines it that we have to ask 38 questions, that we'll discuss further also. We have to ask 38 questions. The length of the question that is given at 20 will be MCQs. So all those things we have to decide before designing of the question. And last but not the least, blueprint. This is also part of assessment framework. So we will discuss about the blueprint in detail further, what a blueprint is and what are the important things we must keep in mind while designing a blueprint. So assessment framework, what it includes, that we have already discussed. Now we'll see what is the purpose, why we need the assessment framework. So one of the important thing why we need assessment framework is that it tells us, it helps us judge the validity of the assessment by making explicit what the aim of the assessment is, what it covers in the terms of knowledge, skills, and content. Another purpose is to define the terms relating to the assessment. Like when I am designing a question paper, when I am taking the help of my colleagues while designing the question paper, I must have very much clarity in mind about the terms we are using in the question paper. Suppose I say a person A has to design an MCQ. So what an MCQ is, and then I say the MCQ is on the concept A. then he has to be very much clear what terms I am going to ask in this. So all the terms should be very much clear to the examiner who is designing the question paper. For all the item writers and the people involved in test development, the assessment framework is again important as it guides for writing the items by explaining which learning domain or which areas are to be covered, how they define and what proportion of the test should focus on each domain. So this is again, if we talk about relevance of the question paper, the designer of the question paper, the item developer should be knowing the framework while framework by guiding the writing items, means what all things, what all learning domains he needs to cover and in what proportions. So as we discussed, blueprint is an important part of the framework. So blueprint, what actually it is? So we all know the blueprint is a document that summarizes the structure of the assessment. It determines how the test is designed and developed. And also it provides us the data of the different types of questions that we have to include. Our test blueprint provides us the topic, the subtopic, the curriculum that we need to assess, the cognitive domain which we want to assess on a particular topic, what type of question we are going to ask. Means this is again all the things we have discussed in the assessment framework, we will be giving it in the blueprint so that we know what type of question and question paper we actually have to prepare. So while designing the blueprint, we must have some things in mind. We must go through some particular steps. The first step is identifying the learning outcomes. These steps, however, we have discussed that what all assessment framework we have to do. So at first we'll identify the learning outcomes. Then on that particular outcome, we have to identify the cognitive domain, the level of the Bloom's taxonomy appropriate for the assessment of that content. Then we have to decide the item type, means what type of item we need, whether it should be a constructive, it is an MCQ or subjective question or whatever. Then calculate the total number of items to be tested and the time required to complete the test. So total number of items that we have to test is given to us by CBSE. But while we are designing the question paper and the blueprint, we must keep in mind that this particular question I am putting in the question paper, and I must decide that what time I should give to the student to write this question. Then we have to again get the review of the test blueprint. Review of everything is very important so that anything if we miss, we may get it reviewed by our colleagues and we get the reviews of other person to correct that thing. So I'm sharing a structure of blueprint which is suggested to us by CBSE on their website. What all things we must include. So here, if we see first column is the main topic. Then in that particular topic, like they tell us the unit. So in that particular topic, what subtopic we may ask. Then the Bloom taxonomy level, whether it should be level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we can design it accordingly. The item format, whether it be the selected response, we say MCQ, or it should be true false or and constructive response questions of 2 marks or 3 marks. Then one very important thing is item difficulty level. So we must see that all the items should not be very easy and all the items again should not be very difficult or challenging. So this thing we must keep in mind while designing a blueprint. Then total items, what we need, and the suggested testing time, how much time the particular person should give to that question. So we must calculate all these things in a blueprint only so that we are able to calculate whether the students will be able to do it on time, whether the difficulty level of the question paper is okay or not, whether we have whether we have covered all the levels of Bloom's taxonomy or not. All these things we must make clear in the blueprint only. So when we have discussed about the assessment framework and the blueprint, I will share the assessment framework given to us by CBSE for class 10th mathematics. Though all of us must be knowing, but it was just I wanted to share because this is given to us by CBSE and how we should prepare when we are designing a question paper. So unit-wise marks distribution at first is given here. Then it is also given to us that the type of question and how much marks we should give to that question. So here Bloom's taxonomy levels are given that remembering and understanding part should be given 43 marks out of 80. Then talking about applying, we should give 19 marks out of 80 to the applying level of questions. Then analyzing, evaluating and creating, we should give 18 marks out of 80 for these levels. So this is the question paper design suggested to us by CBSE for mathematics standard. For mathematics basic, again they have given us that for remembering and understanding part should be 60 marks out of 80, which is around 75%. So this is how we have to keep in mind that while designing the question paper, whether we are able to align with these data given to us as per the cognitive levels. For applying, we have to give 12 marks out of 80. And for the higher order thinking skills, analyzing, evaluating, creating, we should give 8 marks. For the internal assessment, again, we are given 10 marks for the pen paper test and the multiple assessment that we are having in the school. Then portfolio maintenance of the child, 5 marks. And lab practical and activities, 5 marks. So this is how we need to assess our internal assessment. It is same for both the standard mathematics and basic mathematics. After this, CBSE has also suggested us the composition of the question paper. So as per their guidelines, we must have 50% competency based questions, which are in the form of, we can say, subjective questions. There we can ask short answer question, long answer question, source based questions that we are having. So these all should be competency based question. Then we have 20% of MCQs and constructive response questions, 30%. These may include some short answer question or long answer question. So 50% is the major data which we are suggested to keep the MCQs. Sorry, the competency based questions. Now when we are clear with the assessment framework, we will get to know about the question paper. What makes a question paper good? So about a question paper, we must focus on something while we want to design the question paper. We must focus on some things. A good question paper focuses on measuring what students know, understand, and can do, and measure only what it intends to measure. So as I told you earlier also, a good question and a good question paper should be able to measure only what we intend to measure. We should not be giving any XYZ question so that a child has done and we are not able to assess what actually we wanted to assess. A good question paper provides a fair and balanced representation of the aspect of learning in focus. So whatever level of Bloom's taxonomy we want to assess, it should give that we want to assess it. It contains items covering a wide range of difficulty. So as I told you, the types of questions, easy, medium, challenging or difficult questions, every type of questions it should be covering. It should include concepts that are central to the aspect of learning is focus. So one major thing is here that while designing a question paper, while asking a question, we should actually see that whether my question is helping a child to know what he must know in the future, which means whether it will be able to help the child in the future in his studies or not, or in his life aspects or not. A good question paper avoids giving advantage or disadvantage to any group of students on the basis of gender, ethnicity, or any other background characteristic. Now, what it does mean is, like suppose I ask a question, maybe on a game Uno. So mathematics can have a question on the game Uno, but it will give the disadvantage to those students who have never learned how to play Uno. So we should actually keep in mind that it should not give any disadvantage to any of the part of the society. And a good question paper is interesting to the test takers. Means after seeing the question paper, after giving a test, he must be able to actually find something which he must think that this was the question paper. After giving this, I have learned something new. So this he must take it interestingly. So our next topic is Bloom's taxonomy and item development. So we all know the levels of Bloom's taxonomy. There are 6 levels. Remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. The first 3 levels we count under lots, lower order thinking skills, and the upper 3, analyze, evaluate, and create, we count under higher order thinking skills. I will not take much time on it because you all are very much familiar what these levels are. I will just take you to the levels of thinking, means what a student should be able to do on a particular level. So we talk about the remember. So here a student should be able to recall a formula or a result or a theorem or any property. So while giving a question on remember level, we should give questions on these properties. At understand, applying a formula or a known procedure to compute using the relevant information. Whether when we want to assess the application, we must ask a question which is applying the concept in an unknown situation or context to find an unknown thing. Then analyze will be assessed when the child applies the concept in unknown situation along with other concepts to find an unknown thing. Then, and at the evaluate level, a child should be able to analyze different solution strategies and identify an efficient one. At the create level, which is actually very important, to form a conjecture, hypothesis, or relationship between any two quantities. So these things a child should be able to do. Means when we want to assess, we must decide that in this particular concept, we want to assess this and we should give a question accordingly. I will discuss with you the questions of each level using one particular topic, that is mensuration. So at the remember level, the question may be what is the perimeter of a square of sides 4 units. So here if the child remembers the formula of the perimeter, he can simply give the answer. At the understand level, we may ask one side of square stamp is 3 centimeter long. What is the perimeter of the stamp? So when we are given it is a square, when we are given it is the length is 3 centimeter, he should be able to apply. That means he has understood it. At application level, when we want, so here I am giving an unknown situation, an unfamiliar situation. Neha wants to fence the boundary of a square garden of side 20 meter. 1 meter of fencing material cost rupees 500. How much will be the fencing material cost to fence around the garden? So here the context is something different and in unfamiliar situation. So if a child is able to do that, means I understand that he is able to apply the concept. So at the analyze level, I may further increase the level. A thin wire of length 20 centimeter is bent to form a rectangle. If the width of this rectangle is 4 centimeter, then what is the area? Now here the child has to understand that when it is in the form of rectangle, at first what is this 20 centimeter? He should be knowing that this is perimeter, and after that when width is 4, then he has to find the area. So at first he will find the relationship between the perimeter and the width. Accordingly he will find the length and then apply the knowledge to find the area. So here he is able to analyze all the concepts used in it. Then at evaluate level, I will give him 2 situations further. Rudraksh cut off 3 equilateral triangles of sides 2 centimeter each from the 3 corners of a bigger equilateral triangle as shown. Joseph says the perimeter of the new shape is 18 less than as compared to the original, whereas Hina says it is 6 less than as compared to the original triangle. Who is correct and why? So here he is able to evaluate who is correct and how they have reached that particular solution. Then at the create level, again, I have given them some situation. As the area of a shape increases, its perimeter also increases, and verify if it is true. So using these 9 identical square tiles, create a shape which has minimum perimeter. So here they are creating something using the things I have given them. So such type of activities we can conduct in our class also, so that they are able to create something of their own. As we are very much familiar with the 10 gram, all these things, and we can give them those to find out whether they are able to create something new using them or not. So once we have understood the cognitive domain that we are going to assess the student, then the important part is the item development, means question development. So we know the questions are of two types. So first we will discuss the multiple choice questions. So what multiple choice questions are, we all know. We will just see the structure in once. The multiple choice questions uh, have a stem which gives the part of the question, means what information we are giving them and what we want to ask. After that, there are four options, out of which there is an answer key, which is the correct answer to the question. With the answer key, we have three more options. So these three more options are called distractors, or we may call them wrong options, or we may call them incorrect responses. So what the distractors are? Distractors are actually those wrong options which helps us to identify the learning gaps of the child. When we give a question and we give four options, it should be like when we have given one answer key, other three options should not be given randomly. We should apply some wrong concept and then find the answer to assess, so that we know that the child is making this particular mistake and we are able to know the learning gaps of the child. So this is actually the help that distractors do us. Now we will discuss some of the qualities of the good multiple choice question using some examples of the questions. So here is a question. Before that, I have shown you the concept or the competency to be assessed. The concept is factors and multiples of a natural number. I want to assess this. And my question is, which of these is a Mersenne prime? How do you think my question is? I would request the participants to participate now, because as more as you participate in this particular session of reviewing the questions, you will have a good understanding about it. So anyone who would like to say what type of question, how much rating can you give to the question, whether it is a good question or an average question or not a good question? No responses? Okay.
Sir, there is a request. Can you explain Mersenne prime numbers?
Okay, so that is something very good that I wanted someone to ask. So
Yes.
since I have not defined Mersenne prime, and this is not actually the concept in our course, in our syllabus, in our curriculum. So a child must not be knowing the Mersenne prime. When I want to assess the factors and multiples of a natural number, and a student who knows the concept of factors and multiples will not be even able to answer this. Why? Because he does not know the Mersenne prime. So what we understand from this question is, we should be assessing the core concept of the questions. So this is one primary need of the question, that it should measure what is intended to measure, as we discussed in our assessment framework also. Our next question is grade 10 question. It is the probability, it is on the topic probability of an event, and I have given two questions here. I would like you to see the two questions, go through them, and rate which question is better from these two. First question is, two fair dice are rolled together. What is the probability of getting a total number less than 7?
So first one is a
The
better choice.
first one is a better choice, ma'am says. Okay. So can you tell ma'am why first one is a better choice? Okay.
Sir, I think in second one, it is little bit confusing when you have written probability of getting a total number less than 7, maybe.
Yes. Okay. So you think it is in the second, it is quite confusing. But when I see these two questions and I see the options, then as I just discussed, that the distractor should be in the way that we are able to assess whether a child is able to understand the concept or not. When I see here, in the first question, my two distractors are A minus 5 upon 36 and D 7 upon 2. When we see these two distractors, the child will easily eliminate them because he knows that the probability of any event is always between 0 and 1, from 0 to 1. So a child will easily answer that, and he will easily eliminate these two options. So we must say that whenever we are creating the distractors, we must keep in mind that easy elimination should not be there. We must keep the distractors so that a child is not able to eliminate those which are easily eliminated. So this was actually a problematic question which we can fix with this, because here there is no option to be eliminated and we can have some distractors also. Again, we have one more question. So it is the question on factorizing any natural numbers as a power of prime numbers. And my two questions are, what is prime power factorization of 3825? Options are given. In both the questions, the question is same and options are different. So which question do you think is a better one? I would request everyone to please participate. I'm just getting one or two responses here. If you all participate, that will make the session interesting as well. So what is the prime factorization of 3825? Options are given. Which one is a better one?
Sir, I think second option is better because in first one composite numbers are given 21, 35 and 25.
Yes. So very nice, ma'am. As we see in the first option, in the first question, there are 4 options. And in 3 out of those, in first one, there is 21, which is not a prime number. In second, 35, which is again not a prime number. And in D option, it is 25, which is again not a prime number. And our question was, what is prime power factorization? So if a child is not able to factorize and only knows that prime number, what are prime numbers, then he will be able to answer it without knowing how to factorize. So our concept which we wanted to assess was not assessed here. Again, I have a question. So what is the value of A and B in the rectangle below? So we are given a rectangle. We have marked our A, one side is A plus B, other is A minus B, third is 12, and the fourth is 10. And we want to assess solving linear equations in 2 variables. So how would you rate the question? Is it a good question or we can improve it? Yes, participants, responses. Then shall I name the participants to get the response? Okay, so let me describe. Here, when we are given such a question, now if we want to assess the solving linear equation in 2 variables, but if we see in this particular figure, if a child only knows that the opposite sides of a rectangle are equal, then he will be able to see that A plus B is 12 and A minus B is 8. This he will be able to reach to find the linear equations, how to form the linear equations. But after that, even if you only put in the options in the equations, he will get the correct answer. That option A is correct. So our concept which we wanted to assess, the idea of assessment of solving the linear equations is failed. because he has not solved the linear equations but has only put in the options to get the answer. So our testing objective is defeated in this case. Hence, we should, while designing a question, we should keep in mind what our testing objective is and whether we are able to assess that or not. So this question can be fixed by using such a question. I'm giving the same figure. Again, P plus Q, P minus Q are marked, opposite sides are equal. Here, I am asking what is the value of 2P plus Q. So if a child is not solving the linear equation here, he will not be able to reach the solution of 2P plus Q. So I'll be discussing one more question. The question is, which of these is or are not composite numbers? Again, the options are same, means 4 numbers are given. I have given some different options. So in the first question, the options are only 27, 639 and 983469. Only 639 and 983469, only 983469 and none of the numbers. So these two questions are here. And when we see these two questions, in the first question, if we see, they say none of the numbers. Now the question was, which of these is not a composite number? And again, we say none of the numbers. So when two negatives are used, then a child is confused about the question, that what the question actually want to ask. So while we are designing a question, we must see that we must not input any unnecessary difficulty level, because this will again defeat our intended test objective. When a child will be knowing the composite numbers, he will not be able to answer because he is confused with the language. So while designing a question, we must keep the language easy to comprehend. So what makes a question good? Here we will summarize. We should test a skill or concept that is worth understanding. Really test what is intended to be tested. The question should be error-free. It should be age-appropriate. It should be interesting and stimulate thinking. Means the child should be able to trigger his thinking to do the question. State what is expected in clear and unambiguous terms. There should be no ambiguity there. Use clear, concise, and age-appropriate language that I just told you, that the question should be easy to comprehend. The question should diagnose misconception or common errors wherever applicable. As we discussed, the distractor should be strong and plausible, and we should be able to identify the misconception. If a child gives some wrong answer, we should be able to know that this child has this misconception because of which he has given this wrong answer. A good question should check the understanding and application in an unfamiliar context. It should use relatable, engaging real life context, and it should not be contrite. So these all things we must keep in mind while designing a question paper. And while we know what we should do, we should actually know what we should not do. So while we are designing a question, we should not check for trivial or inconsequential details, means which are irrelevant. We should not use those details. Sometimes we give a question of 1 mark and the child has to read about half a page for that. So that will be wrong. We should give to the point details so that a child does not waste his time on reading it. The question should not be taken directly from the wording in the textbooks or the reading. Why? So because sometimes a question is good, and at a we can say applying or analyze level, but when we give it directly from the question, it becomes a remember or understanding level, because the child has learned it and just written it on the answer sheet while he was not at that level of competency. So our next type of questions are free response questions. So free response question, which we generally call subjective questions. And why do we need them? So when we see MCQs, there are some disadvantages of the MCQs as well, that we are not able to know whether sometimes a child gives a question like he guesses that this may be the answer. He does not apply any concept. So, and maybe he's correct. So we are not able to judge whether he was correct or not. Subjective question give us the liberty. If a child has written the question step by step, then we are able to give them. Secondly, in an MCQ, there is no partial marking. Maybe a child has got wrong at some later step and he will get no marks for the partial correctness what he has done. But here we can give them partial credit for what we have done. In using a reference free response questions, we are able to assess the complex skills of the or the concepts, which we are not able to do sometimes in the case of MCQs. We can give partial credits, as I told you. There can be multiple answer formats. So suppose if a child has not written the answer in our desired way, sometimes we see a child gives answer in some way that we have not even learned by then. So it is a good learning opportunity for us as well. Reveal misconceptions. Obviously, when a child is doing something, we know at what step he is having what misconception, and we can correct it easily. Accurately demonstrate student knowledge. So we are able to know how much he knows. So what actually we should do while designing a good free response question? So when we want to assess the core concept or skill, we should choose a competency as per the blueprint, decide the testing objective, and identify the cognitive level to assess. So this is my first thing that I should do while creating a question. Now, at designing the question, during designing of question, I should ensure the content should be error-free, mathematically and language-wise. Because we may say a mathematics teacher may give wrong language, what happens? But sometimes that wrong language gives wrong input to the child, due to which he is confused and not able to give the answer correctly. So we should ensure it, the content should be error-free. Then we should write the STEM in a simple and easy to comprehend language. We have seen this, we have discussed this earlier as well. We should use real life context. So when we were discussing that a child means it should, the assessment should be interesting for a child. A good question paper should be interesting. So when we use real life context, which they experience, then they find it authentic, they find it relatable, and they are actually connected with it. So find it interesting. So while sourcing any source-based questions, we should use those concepts of the real life so that they find it interesting. Award appropriate score and create appropriate rubric or evaluation. So this is, as I told you earlier also, this is important part during designing of question paper, that we design an appropriate rubric for the evaluation, because that will only give the fair assessment of a child. So as we reach the term, we will now be discussing the marking scheme. So marking scheme, we all know what it is. It is the written guide that help teachers to mark constructed response questions in a systematic and objective manner. So what can be the marking criteria in case of the marking scheme we'll discuss here? A marking criteria has got 3 types of markings in mathematics. One is the method marks, the other is the accuracy marks, the other is an equivalent form. So when we all actually know that method marks are to be awarded if a method is correct, even if the answer is not. But it is not usually sufficient for a child to write the formula. Like suppose if he simply writes the formula, then we cannot give the marks for the method, because maybe he has learned it and he is not able to apply it, right? So we must be checking that when the child has quoted a formula, then he should be able to substitute the values in that formula, so that we are able to identify whether he is able to correctly apply the formula or not. So these method marks should be given when a child has the understanding of the concept and he shows it using the application of that formula or whatever concept it is. Then accuracy. So in the case of accuracy, marks are awarded for the correct answer. So here we also know that when a question has got some parts or it has got some different competency levels to be assessed, then these accuracy marks are given step by step for each step. When that what accuracy, what they must have known by this point, what they have known by this point. Every step, marks of accuracy should be designed. Then any other equivalent form. So while designing a a marking scheme, we should give liberty to the child for any equivalent form if he or she has used. So here is a design of the marking scheme. At first, I'm showing you the question. This is a class 10 mathematics question. Cognitive level is evaluate. Marks are 6 and time is 7 minutes. So when I told you about the types of blueprint, means what we should include in the blueprint, at that time we had discussed about all this, that while designing a blueprint we must write the class, subject, this is obviously we know. Then the content area, what we are going to assess, this is symmetry, cognitive level for that, marks allotment, and the time allotment, what time we are giving to the child for solving this question. Then the learning outcome should be clearly defined, and after that only we must write a stem. And once the stem is written, now we must show what is the marking scheme behind this question. So the marking scheme, as we see here, we can show M1 means the marks for the method, and A means the marks for the accuracy. So these are some of the different kinds of marks that we give to the child when we are designing a marking scheme. We must define all of them. Now I will take you to some of the different templates and the different templates and checklists which we must refer while designing a question paper. So this is the template for blueprint that I have already shown in my slides. Yes. Sorry, I think I have not shared the screen. Just give me a minute. Stop sharing. Share. So am I able to share? Is my screen visible now?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So here we'll discuss some of the checklists that we must have while designing a question paper. So this is the template for the blueprint that we have already discussed. Then distribution of marks across the cognitive level. This we must prepare so that we are able to know that whether we are aligning with the marks distribution given by CPSE or not. Then distribution of marks across difficulty level. We must write the marks which we are giving so that we see that wide range of questions from each difficulty level is given. Then we have got a template for item mapping. So this is the template where we are seeing that every type of question from every cognitive level and every difficulty level is given. Now this is the template for creation of a constructed response item, or we can say a subjective question. So as I've just shown you, we should write class, subject, topic, cognitive level, weightage means the marks allotted, time required, the course outcome, the learning outcome, the competency statement, as I've shown you many of the questions, the item stem, and the marking scheme. Again, and reviewer, we can add who has reviewed the question, so that we have a checklist also that everything for the question is done. Then this is a template for design. Defining them here. Sorry, internet lost. Am I audible? Because connection is lost here once.
Sir, you're audible.
Okay, thank you. I think screen is also visible. So now here is the checklist for competency statement. Whether we have, we'll check whether the learning outcome is given or not, competency is specific or not. So these are the checklist. For item quality check, so this is, as we have discussed, whether a question is a relevant question, valid question, whether learning outcome is assessed or not. So these checklists are all available also on the website of CBSE. I have taken it from there only. This is a checklist for blueprint, whether all cognitive domains are uniformly addressed, all the learning outcomes which can be assessed using pen and paper test are included, whether our distribution of the questions at different levels of competencies is correct or not. Then the checklist of questions, question paper. Finally, when we have designed all the questions and we are putting it in the questions, we must check all these things. Instructions to the candidates are accurate and not ambiguous. So as we see at the top of the question paper, CBSE gives some instructions. There's these many questions are of this mark, these many questions are of this marks. We must check that it is accurate and aligning with the questions which we are putting in and with the blueprint. The questions are sequenced from easy to hard difficulty levels in a particular question paper. Questions with diagrams and illustrations are on the same page. Questions based on passage should be on the same page or adjacent pages. So it should not be like a child has to go on first and second page again and again to read a question. So all these checklists we must see that we have gone through. Then checklist for the marking scheme and the style of question paper and all. So all these things we must see while we are designing a question paper. So this is all. With this, I would be ending my session. So if anyone has any questions, you may please ask. Yes, if anyone has any questions. So attendance link is pasted in the chat box. You all may refer to it to fill in to give the attendance. And meanwhile, whosoever is having any queries, they may please ask. Okay, so thank you for your
teacher who want to ask the question?
Sorry, sir.
Any teacher who want to ask the question? Actually, session was very interesting. It was self-explanatory. You have given the detail of various things.
Thank you, sir.
Especially, you have covered. I like the way you have presented one question. That is the question related to the levels of thinking, starting from the remember, then understanding, then application, then analyzing, evaluating, and finally to creating. And how a question can be asked in different level. So that was very good.
Thank you, sir.
And I hope that our teachers will understand the basic concept. And if they want to suggest anything, we are most welcome. So thank you very much, Rakesh. And
Welcome,
thank
sir.
you to your team for this fabulous presentation.
Welcome, sir.
Namaskar, sir. Namaskar, sir. Am I?
Namaskar, Anshu.
Namaskar, sir. Namaskar to everyone. I would like to begin by expressing my sincere gratitude to Dr. A.K. Sharma, Regional Education Officer, Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, New Delhi. His dedication and vision in organizing these sessions have been instrumental in fostering a vibrant learning environment for all of us. It is my great honor and privilege to deliver the vote of thanks for today's enlightening session presented by Mr. Rakesh Kumar. His comprehensive insights into the design and development of the class 10th mathematics paper have not only enriched everyone's understanding, but also highlighted the meticulous effort and strategic thinking that goes into shaping such a critical aspect of our education system. Mr. Kumar, your in-depth analysis of how to balance the curriculum requirements with students' learning needs have provided us with valuable perspectives. Your presentation has been both inspiring and practical, offering key takeaways that will undoubtedly enhance our approach to teaching and assessing mathematics. On behalf of all present, I extend our heartfelt gratitude for your time, energy, and dedication. We look forward to putting these insights into practice and fostering even stronger learning outcomes for our students. Thank you all once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Anshu. Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
So attendance link, please see the attendance link. If it is not